It is very easy for us to say, why? Why, God? Why? We live in a society, not only a society, but a world where there's the rich, the middle class, the poor. No matter where you go, there's the rich, the middle class, the poor. Somebody is always doing better than somebody else. You have those who are rich and famous. You have those who are born into wealth. You have those who have families that are doing pretty well. They're not rich or poor. Then you have the poor. Then you have those who are sick. You have those who have some sort of medical issue. Some may have deformities. Some were born without limbs, and some were born and they died early. And everything that happens in our life, we can look back and say, Lord, why did this happen? A person can be carrying a child and suddenly loses a child, or the child is born and lives for a short time, lives for a short bit of time. Excuse me, drink some water. And all those things, we will say, why, Lord? Why, Lord? Why? Well, there are two reasons why a lot of things happen in this world. One is going to be the will of God, and one is going to be as a result of the will of man. Nothing happens in this world just by happenstance, but everything has a purpose. And I want you to know that no matter who you are and what your lot in this life is, you have a purpose. Very often we focus on the outside, the outer man. We focus on, by way of our senses, our five senses, we look at what's going on around us. And then we're also looking at what is the standard for my society? What's the standard for my country? What's the standard for my group of people? What is the standard for my age group? What should I be accomplishing right now? What should I be doing? According to my culture, my society, should I be married now? Is it a flaw to be divorced? What sort of house should I have? Should I have my third car versus my having only one? What is the norm for your country? What does the norm say for your country, for your society? Is your skin tone acceptable or is it not? And if you do have the quote unquote acceptable skin tone and look, what is now the regime, the standard that's required for you to maintain that? And if you don't, what does your society, what does standards say is the result of not being able to maintain the perfect look, the perfect weight, the perfect status? And so we find that there's a lot of people that's dying from stress on the body. Some are taking their own lives because they're under so much stress from the society, from their household, from their parents, and then what's going on in their own heads. And if they accomplish everything and should lose it, if you get married and you get divorced, that's a problem. If you attain everything and you get the wealth and you get the business, and now you are the CEO, now you are a shareholder in many major companies, now you have this pressure of the dog-eat-dog world that can happen in the corporate world. So you're always going to be working for something. But people lose fact that we are souls sojourning in this world for a certain period of time. You must realize that each and every one of us, regardless of the lot we have been given in our lives, whether you are poor and whether you are rich, you have a purpose. On the outside, in the natural, you are poor. But in the spirit, you're not a poor person. Your spirit man is not poor. You may be in a wheelchair in the natural, but your spirit man within has no sort of, no limitations, no physical limitations. You can't run fast in the natural, but your spirit man surpasses speed. And so it is very important. That is why the Lord tells us to love our neighbor as ourselves. Because sometimes people will look at a person because of where they are, because of their lack of status. They're not wearing nice clothes. They're running a small little restaurant, don't have a lot of money. They may be selling stuff on the street. They may be working in, they're doing housekeeping, they're working, they're mechanics, okay? They may be they're doing cleaning, they're doing gardening work, and people in society tends to want to look at these individuals like something's wrong with them, treat them less than. In this world, people look at your educational status, what you've accomplished, what you've not, but God does not look at that. You are looking, and you very well may be looking at a king that is in this world doing gardening, a royal heir that is in this world cleaning out the public bathrooms, a royal heir that is in this world in a wheelchair, in this earthly body, in a wheelchair, has some deformities, has some physical limitation, mental limitations. Why? Because every last one of us has a purpose. And sometimes it is a message to mankind. It is a message and lessons to be taught, and certain things that we as humans, as people who said that we are of God, there's certain ways that we are to engage. I remember reading a scripture in the Bible where it was in John, the early chapters of John. It might be John 1 or 2. And no, it's not John 1 and 2. But it is in the book of John. And the man that was laying in front of the temple called Beautiful, and his disciples, the disciples of Jesus, asked Jesus, who sinned, this man or his mother? And Jesus said, neither this man nor his family have sinned. But basically what he's saying, that neither his mother or father have sinned, but that God may be glorified through him. That was his purpose at that moment. And so oftentimes these individuals that you may look at, and we may think, oh, what happened to him? What happened to her? But sometimes it's so that God can be glorified. These individuals are sent or infused in this body, these spirit men and women, as we are all spirit, for a purpose. And oftentimes it's hard for them. They struggle with it because they're looking at what society says, and so they begin to blame God. And so they become bitter, they become hateful. But they have a purpose. It is very important that we don't mistreat people. We don't put labels on people. There's a lot of people that are rich and they have money and they too serve a purpose. But oftentimes we find the rich walking in pride. We find the rich spreading their properties and their riches and building things that's for them. There's a rich person who will be a family of 3. That rich person, their spouse, and their 1 child. Yet they will build these huge, huge homes, and they have 5 and 6 different homes that they don't live in. While a family that can easily live comfortably in just their foyer alone is sleeping outside. These are the injustices. These are the spiritual injustices that the rich, some of them, is going to stand before God for, because they don't realize that they've been put in these positions of power and authority and riches to serve and to help others. Now, there's some rich people who have a consciousness of God, but he's not in their heart. So because they have God consciousness, okay, I'm doing the quote in quote signs with my hand, God consciousness, you find that they will be, you find them doing good things. They'll pay off someone's bill, they'll pay off someone's debt, they'll buy someone a house, they'll build some schools, and all these things, but it's not because it has to do with them being God conscious. This is the right thing to do. They may have a heart for people, but you know what? It doesn't come from God, because while they're serving people, they don't serve God. While they're building for people, they're not going to serve God. Their hearts, they serve themselves. They may believe and serve in other gods. They do what they want to do. But this is the good thing I'm going to do, because within every man, we have conscience and we are aware of God. That's what makes you feel bad or guilty. That makes you feel a check when something happened. That's what makes you watch a movie and they're crying and you can cry, because we're all connected by our conscience. But guess what? There are people that they no longer hear their conscience because they're sinning so much. They become separated. That's why they don't hear God anymore. And because these people are not looking to God, they're not serving the Lord. I'm talking about the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, who sent his son, Jesus Christ, on this earth to become a sacrifice for an atonement for our sins. They don't believe in any of that. But they will do some things. They will do great things, but you'll find in their hearts, they were always separated from God because they lived for themselves and they think they can do a trade-off. Well, God, look at what I did. But in actuality, you're not doing anything new under the sun for God, because God made it possible for you to be rich. God made it possible for you to be able to attain these things. All things belong to God. So you can't come to God to bargain with God with what he gave you. But what God never forces us to do is to choose him. He's always given us choice to serve him and to turn to him. So my whole point is, the rich, they have purpose too. They're in positions of power. They can either use their power to oppress others, to make life difficult for others, to take the lives of other people, to use their riches to just spread and continue to push the poor further and further out in the outskirts. There's a country, I know it's a Spanish country, where they built a wall. I don't know if it's in Mexico or not, but somewhere they've built a wall that separates the rich from the poor. And the wall is very high. You see this beautiful rich part of the country. It might not be Mexico, guys, I'm not sure. And then there's the other side, because they don't want to see the ugly and they want them to stay over there. And so you can imagine those individuals might be thinking, God, why? Or begin to believe the lies of society. Most people end up living a life of bitterness and anger, or trying to do stuff and having absolute depression and anxiety, from the rich down to the very poor, because they look at their lives and they think they're being cursed, because people say, well, you didn't finish school, you came from a one family home, or you're super rich and look, you could maintain and do what your father did. All these different things, guys, and they're losing sight of they are a spirit man. And if they turn to God, and I'm encouraging you all to turn to God and to seek him for the answers of what your purpose is, then you won't spend time hating yourself, hating others, being resentful, wanting what others have. There are a lot of things, especially when someone has a child and the child passes. It is horrible, or you hear of the abuse and the things that's going on. It is a horrible thing. And this is where the other thing that I mentioned, guys, some things, everything, nothing happens without God, okay? But at the same, without God knowing it. But there are other things that happen, guys, things that happen in this life as a result of the choices of man. People choosing to follow God or not. People choosing in their own heart to hurt a child, to sell a child, to do the unthinkable to a child, to do the unthinkable to another human being. The wickedness of those who are maybe of lighter pigmentation to want to oppress those who are darker. The the choices that men will make to those who are already of dark pigmentation to elevate themselves above, because they're not as dark as the next one, to hate within their own races, to destroy one another. You can put a group of people by themselves, they have the same culture and nationality and everything. If the entire world was filled with just Asians, they will still find a reason to kill one another. Because there's something in the heart of man to want to overpower and to overtake and to look at themselves and say, I'm better than you for some reason. If this just was a whole world where it was just filled with all black people, all African people, they will find a way to destroy one another. They will kill and destroy one another as well, right? Because there's something in man when they do not realize they have purpose through God to want to overtake, to want to overshadow. Why? Because there's a spirit of evil in the world too. God is all sovereign, but there's also the powers of darkness. And they're there too. So when men within their own hearts choose to do evil, this is where we see that they'll follow up with the power of darkness, the ideas that comes from the powers of darkness, and then they'll do wicked and evil things. But in all of that, there's still purpose. I am not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it is okay. But we all have a choice. If there's a glass on the counter, we all have a choice. If it comes in our mind to just knock it off the counter and let it crash on the floor, we always have a choice. There should be a short millisecond dialogue that goes through your mind where you know it would not be beneficial to do it. But some people, they just want the thrill of it breaking. They'll slap it off. They know that there's better use for that glass, but this is what they want to do. So it all depends on how your heart is stirred. I want to bring this back home. It's time for us to stop blaming God for things. Stop cursing God, because that's not going to make things any better. And at the end, when you leave your body, you now stand in eternity. You now stand in eternity. I invite you to turn to the Lord. I invite you to seek him out. I invite you to turn your hearts to him and learn what your purpose is and walk in that purpose. I see many people. I've seen this on TEDx. This young man has a severe case of, they have a fancy name for it, but basically he looks very small, very underdeveloped, and he was 17 years old. And you saw this young man just pushing through all of that, became a motivational speaker, all of that, doing the best that he can with his life. And he did eventually pass away. I think he's only 17, right? So when I saw that TEDx video of him, that was going to be his last interview. But he was not expected to live to even that age. Then there's another young lady. She looks very, 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 very fragile, almost skeletal. And she went through all types of things in her life, being teased and insulted. But I saw that lady turn around and become a motivational speaker, and is currently one. What is it that allows her to do that versus someone that's perfectly beautiful and fine who takes their own life because, let's say, their boyfriend broke up with them, there was a scandal on them, so they hang themselves, they jump in front of a train because they got fired from a job? Guys, let us all turn to God, because in the end, the devil only wants to destroy us. In all things, remember, you have a purpose. You have a purpose. And who you are in that mirror is not who you are within. Your spirit man, our spirit man, has no deformities, has no imperfections, have no flaws in spirit. But you can destroy yourself by focusing on the world and not focusing on God and letting Him lead you and direct you so you can fulfill the mission and the purpose you have in this life.